Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us on our Facebook Live. We regret that we can't be in person, but I think this is going to be really nice and kind of the next best thing. We are going to wait a couple of minutes until some more people can get on and join us, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Just gonna wait. For those of you who might already be here, my name is Amy Van Otegum. I'm the Director of Education and Public Programming at the Albany Museum of Art. Next to me there is our director, Dr. Andrew Wolf. And then we also have our artist, Juan Logan, whose works you may or may not have seen. They're currently on view in our main gallery. If you haven't gotten a chance to see them yet, we are open tomorrow from 10 to 5, and it's always free to come in or come on in next week. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So thank you all again for joining us. If you're just hopping on, we are having a conversation. I don't like calling it a lecture because it's not boring. With artist Juan Logan and Dr. Andrew Wolf about art and social responsibility. This conversation is largely based off of our main gallery exhibition right now at the Albany Museum of Art, Creating and Collecting from Juan Logan. And I am going to hand it over to Andy.
Well, thank you, Annie. And I just want to express my gratitude to you and to Juan for being here tonight, and to anyone who is participating on Facebook Live. During these interesting times that we're in, sometimes we have to adapt, and this museum has, well, this museum and all the artists it's shown in the last 6 months have had to truly adapt to different and unreal circumstances. Certainly, we'd love to have this lecture in-house with a crowd. I am delighted to be here with Juan Logan and to talk a little bit about his work and about his thoughts on the artist and social responsibility. But I also wanted to call out a couple things that I think just need to be named as we launch this talk. And that is, we're living in a time as what Smithsonian Secretary Lonnie Bunch would call a time of 2 pandemics. And those pandemics are illness and racism. Those ideas may surface again tonight in our conversation, but there is a backdrop to this conversation, and that backdrop is not a peaceful one necessarily. What we see out our front doors and in our cities and even in our rural areas, we see these convulsions, we see grief, we see anger, we see but the work of artists like Juan and the work of museums, I'd like to think, like the Albany Museum of Art and countless others and countless other artists, are really attempting to make inroads to address these issues and to talk about these core values that maybe can help see us through. So stop there for the moment. I will be talking more later with Juan. Juan, we would love to hear from you. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. And thank you, Annie and Andy, for inviting me in this evening and for hosting the exhibition. I'm so glad that it's there. I've been making art for ever, it seems, at least for the last 50 years or so. So really just getting started, I mean, really and truly. But it's one of those things that all the years that I've been doing it, I've never grown tired of doing it. It is always challenging, always exciting in its own way. And I simply have the best time going to the studio every day. I do try to work 7 days a week. Been doing that for a while now. And it really is, I'll just say it's enjoyable. My work, on the other hand, can be challenging in its own way. I try to explore the things that are happening in America on a daily basis, and not so much to provide answers to questions, but more to perhaps ask the question. I think that's probably most important. Uh, Many times folks are looking at my work and wondering if they should accept my answers as being theirs, and they really shouldn't. They should find their own. This piece, which is titled Unconscious Bias, was done a few years ago, and it was really based on a study that was in the New England Journal of Medicine. And it was a survey of, I think, maybe 1,500 cardiologists. And the only thing that varied in the survey was race and gender. All of the cardiovascular problems were the same. And what they found is that 98% of the times, with the same cardiovascular problems, white males were referred to specialists, and African Americans and white females were given medicine and sent home. And when they were shown the results of the survey, they said, well, it's not being done intentionally, so it must be an unconscious bias. The thing that's always interested me about that is when I look at my family, when I approach this on a very, very personal level. And it's when my Aunt Estelle was ill, went to the doctor one morning, was given medicine and sent home, and she died about 3 hours later. My cousin Junior, and Junior was that favorite cousin, um, the one who drove fast cars and talked about women and gave me liquor to drink way early in life, that favorite cousin, was checking out of Carolina's Medical Center in Charlotte and complaining of chest pains and sweating profusely and all that, sort of having all the traditional signs of having a heart attack. And the nurse said, well, listen, when you get home, just take an antacid, you'll be fine. He died in the front seat with me about a block from the hospital. And then back to my father, who was having a heart attack, had a heart attack. We called the doctor, and the doctor said, listen, I would love to come see about you. And this is when they were still making house calls and all that. He said, I'd love to come see about you, but I just got tickets to this baseball game. It was a local game, and said, I hate to miss that last game of the season. So he didn't come, and my father died an hour or so later. And that was unconscious bias sort of playing out in my life in real terms. And it's really interesting in that when the doctors were shown the results of the survey, they said, well, it's not being done intentionally, so it must be an unconscious bias. But then when you look at things like African Americans leading the nation sort of in two operations, testicle removal, of course, and amputations, testicular cancer, and diabetes, both of which are very, very treatable. It's just that we don't get the treatment. And you would like to think that things are equal today in terms of how people are treated medically. But the only thing we have to do is look at COVID-19 and we realize things really aren't equal at all. The vast majority of the people dying are African Americans and Latinos. May I have the next image, please? I did this piece in a way as a response to the previous image. Oh, and just to give you a sense of the previous images, there were 1,200 of those heads that were cast. And sad to say, they'd been shown at a museum, had been packed and being shipped to another museum for another exhibition. And unfortunately, they didn't get packed correctly. And then they sat them on the dock waiting for the shipper to pick them up. The shipper picked them up, tossed them in the truck. It was 19 degrees that morning, but all those pieces were wax. So when they arrived at the next museum, the curator called me and says, Juan, you know how people talk slow when something's not really quite right? And she was talking really, really slow that morning. And she said, listen, we have this problem. Said most of the pieces have been destroyed. So when they tossed them in the truck, they were all frozen. So they all simply shattered. And out of those 1,200, 25 of them survived. That was it. So I have, generally when an insurance company settles with you, they will take the work and sell it on a secondary market, but there was nothing to sell in this case. So they send all of it back to me. This piece, and I think the title of the piece is Whose Song Shall I Sing? And it's asking, whose song shall I sing? It's talking about our national anthem, or Lift Every Voice and Sing, which is often referred to as the Black national anthem. One speaks of pride, dignity, and self-respect, and the other speaks of maintaining the stereotype. And I think it's important also to think in terms of the additional stanzas, if you will, or portions of that of the Star Spangled Banner, because that's not the only thing that we sing. We sing that one thing, but you really should read, if you haven't, the other verses, because they really speak of maintaining um, slavery, basically. But take a look at it sometimes when you get a chance. May I have the next image, please? The title of this piece is Help Me, Save Me, Love Me. And I did this while thinking about what was happening, had happened with Katrina in New Orleans. And what you're looking at are all these puzzle pieces, which is how this piece was made, along with paint and other things. But it was like this huge puzzle had been taken apart that you couldn't put back together again. And the Red Cross is there, of course, because that Red Cross sort of represented the Red Cross, FEMA, the Superdome, all of which were supposed to help people, but actually in the end did not. And that was the sad thing about that. So you find people actually migrating around the Superdome, the Red Cross, and FEMA. Um, this piece is 5 by 16 feet in terms of size. May I have the next image, please? And the next image, please. I wanted you to see where this is really sort of coming from. The image on the left is of people waiting outside the Superdome, waiting to go inside. And in blowing it up on the right, it sort of pixelates into puzzle pieces. But that was sort of the inspiration for the piece. You can't discern individuals, and you're looking at bits and pieces of their clothing, of whatever it is they could carry with them is what you're looking at. But you can't discern individuals at all. But at the same time, it says everything about them. This is all that was left, if you will. Now, if you go back one image, so look at this close up. Now you can really see the Red Cross. You can see the puzzle pieces. You can see the migration around that Red Cross. And again, I think at that time, the president of the country had someone who was dealing with horses, actually running FEMA, who had never done that before, which maybe speaks of why it was such a failure and why so many people died and could not be rescued. The small heads that you see sort of in the bottom right area run underneath. Those are all the folks that didn't make it, but they run underneath the entire piece. And I decided I would use a Matisse color, which is called Ghost Gum. It seemed appropriate in terms of what these images were about, but those are all tiny heads, if you will. Thank you. Let's move forward, if you will, please. And the next image. This is I'll Save You Tomorrow. And I'm sure you've all had that friend out there in the world that you asked for help from, and he or she said, well, I'd love to help you, but I can't do it today. I can help you tomorrow. And your response is, I don't need help tomorrow. I need help today. Can you help me today? Well, again, this is sort of looking at Katrina again, and that is that inverted boat. It's upside down. It's filled with lifesavers. It's filled with lottery tickets. It's filled with everything that would create some level of hope. But nothing came for so many. And then I listen to our legislators sometimes talking about, what they can do, their inability to do anything at the moment. So what we need to do for them is pray. Well, they can pray for themselves. What they need is actual help. Genuinely. Real help. And it happens time and time again. And you listen to people even today, this is all we can do right now. We can't help them any more than we already have. And on and on and on. But people continue to suffer and struggle beyond it simply being challenging. And I put that bow tie in there, and the bow tie actually sort of glistens because that's a clean pristine bow tie. That's that person who's always ready, standing on the sidelines to help, to offer help, even when he probably shouldn't. He's just looking for a way to make the next dollar. But they're always there. They're always there. And on the left-hand side, there's that Red Cross again, and all those folks sort of floating underneath all of that because they didn't make it either. But they did receive all those prayers, that was helpful, I'm sure. And please don't think that I'm being cynical here. Really, I'm not. It's just that it is disheartening to watch this occur over and over and over again and to say, surely we can do something. And our legislators say that they're going to provide them with their prayers once again. And could we go over to, I believe, waiting? I did this piece in 2015, but it was all about the folks that passed away, were killed in 2014. Some of you probably recognize some of the names: Eric Gardner, Michael Brown, um, Tamir Rice. And what I'm saying here is not that these are all people that were unarmed and still killed by police officers. I'm not suggesting for a moment that we have been waiting for centuries now for justice to be treated equally and so on and so forth. We have died to bring about change. We've shed a lot of blood trying to bring about change. We've protested in peaceful and not so peaceful ways. We've done everything you can possibly imagine just to bring about change. So the question, I think, would have to be, what would you do if you had been waiting all of these years and put forth all of that effort and nothing actually happened? My image disappeared, Janelle. Any suggestions? Can you still see my? Okay, oh, good. Okay, I just can't see the image anymore. Let's see here. Hold on one second. Nope. Okay, well, as long as you can see it. Let's see here. So in any case, as I was saying, the question remains, what would you have to do if you had been waiting all of this time? Would you be willing to continue that process of waiting? And at the end, I'm saying, I'm still waiting. We are all still waiting for something to happen. And yet, we look at Rochester, New York, and it's happened again. We look at George Floyd, and it happened again. And Mr. Blake, and it happened again. Surely someone is asking, why does this continue to happen this way? And then Elizabeth Catlin and I we did several shows together over the years, and we were on stage one day and we were talking about the idea of social as opposed to political. And we said that, well, my work really isn't political at all. It's very, very social. Political means you're taking a point of view. Social simply means that you're dealing with the problems of the times, more or less. So I'm simply dealing with the issues of our time. These are the things that we've been dealing with for years. They remain so. We keep thinking that it's going to go away, but they refuse to. We think that when I was talking about the issue with heart issues earlier and the medical industry, we would think that things have changed. But then we look back, and it's so easy to look back, you see, at the Tuskegee experiments from days ago, and then you look at Black churches today and you wonder why there are no old Black men in there. It's because we stopped going to doctors years ago for fear of being treated that way again. And yet here we are today dealing with COVID, and we are once again at the forefront of those who are dying first. And it just continues. So again, when I talk about us, when I talk about our American culture, I'm not pointing the finger at anyone. I'm simply saying these are our issues. And there are indeed our issues. The question at hand is what can we do to solve these problems? It's not a you solving, it's not a me solving, but what can we do together to solve these problems? And the thing that I always find really, truly interesting is the fact that when people say there's no systemic racism in America, well, we know that's not true, first of all. Let's be real about it. When we look at the reason things exist as they do, it's about the policies that have been put in place, the policies that legislators and politicians refuse to change. But if they want change, if they truly, truly want change, they're the ones who put the policies in place. We didn't. Then have them, ask them, make them, demand that they change those policies if they actually want real change. That's the only way it can happen. It's not going to happen any other way. And again, it's unfortunate so many believe that there is no systemic racism in this country. And that's really, really interesting when you look at the history of who we have been. But those of you who haven't taken the time to explore these things, please look at Without Sanctuary. You see, it's by James Allen. It's a very short book, but it's worth your time, I promise you. Isabel Wilkerson just came out with a new book called Caste. Worth your time. The New York Times published 1619 last year before last, also worth your time. There's so many things that can provide you with a wealth of information if you actually want to know. And then once you know, then you can consider what can be done, what should be done to bring about change. Because many people often feel that they don't really understand what the problem is in the first place. When you think about why do African Americans sometimes have issues with police officers? Well, again, when you read James Allen's book, Without Sanctuary, and it's more of a photo book than it is a book of essays. I think there are only a couple of essays in it, but consider this, that for all the lynchings that occurred in America, the police were actively or passively involved about 98% of the times. So they either assisted in the process or they watched it take place and did nothing. So why would we want to trust those people? Period. And again, I'm talking about this in terms of there being a long, drawn-out history of this. This is not something that's new. It goes back forever. Back to the days of, slavery and all that, and trustees, and all those who were being hunted. And then once they were found, they were beaten, and on and on and on and on, I think Maurice T. Jones, who was this scholar, historian at the University of Virginia, I believe, went through all the letters of the slave owners in Charleston and documented the letters that they used to write to each other and how they treated people. And I think the most alarming thing for me has often been in my research is discovering just how inhumane we have been, period. And please keep in mind that I keep referring to we. It is our nation. It's not yours, it's not mine, it is our nation. And for any segment of that nation to treat other individuals, other human beings in this particular way says so much about who we have been. And if we continue to do it, who remain, the fact that we remain that way today, that should be problematic. And I mentioned this to my wife earlier, and I said, it's really a very, very curious thing that even when we talk about where we are today, and people often say that, bygone days in terms of slavery and blah, 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 blah. But people say, it's like the State Department acknowledging the fact that there are 30 to 50,000, 50 to 100,000 women and girls taking made into slaves annually in this country and are being sold in this country and shipped out of this country annually. That's going on today. Most of those folks are white today. And again, these are not my issues any more than they're yours. But I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that these are the things that are taking place as part of our existence in this country today. We don't have to historicize it. We don't have to do anything. And that's really what I'm talking about. So I guess I'm getting at the notion here. Lost my image again. There we are. I guess I'm getting at the whole idea here. You see that when it comes down to what we can do we remain passive about these things? Do we try to put the blame on someone else? Do we say that happened eons ago, so it's not my problem, and on and on and on? But see, and I'm looking at looking up one thing right now, and I realize that I probably should not even consider going down this path, but
I think you should, Juan.
okay, fine.
Feel free.
Okay, all right. Now you see, Andy, you say that now, but let me find this one thing very, very quickly here. Because see, here's what I'm saying about those 50 to 100,000 women and girls that are being kidnapped annually and sold. If someone kidnapped your child and sold them, where would you want to put the statue of that person that kidnapped and sold them? So when you ask people why they would want to honor people that participated in that process in our history, why would we want to maintain statues of those people? If that's what they have done, if they did that to your children, is that what you would want to happen to those people? I think it's a fair question, personally. I don't know. Again, let me move forward. And because people often ask how I work, where I work, and all those kinds of things, the next image should speak to that. At least I hope so. This is my studio. It is it's a wonderful place to work in. It's about 7,100 square feet of space. That I think the ceilings at the highest point is about 20 feet or so. And it's just a fun place to work in. It gives me the opportunity to work on really large things if I want to. I can leave them up for months at a time if I choose to, until I can truly decide if the piece is actually finished. Because sometimes it takes a while. Pieces like I'll Save You Tomorrow, or Help Me Save Me, Love Me. Um, Help Me Save Me, Love Me took probably about 7, 8 months or so. Because there are thousands of pieces of puzzle on that piece. But it's a working, everyday kind of studio though. And the lights are up because we had a party in there too. Great place to party. But that's all I'll say about these things. And again, please keep in mind that the questions, the things that I raise are not intended to in any way to point fingers, but rather to simply put it on the table in terms of a question, because I think until we're in a position to ask those kinds of hard questions, rarely, if ever, we'll be able to find true answers, because we'll always find a way to skate around those problems, the answers, the questions themselves, and said, well, nothing's changed. But then again, you have to want to bring about change too. Thank you.
Well, Juan, thank you so much. You are truly a gift to share all of your insights and your work. And I'm actually sitting in front of Help Me, Save Me, Love Me, and it's an honor to be in this beautiful gallery with your work.
Thank you.
I think because you covered so much. You covered everything from natural disasters to racist policing, to the toppling of colonial monuments, to BLM, to otherness, to the social recession that we find ourselves in. I think I might just steer us just back to the initial theme, and we can branch out again.
Sure.
And thank you so much for your personal stories.
You're welcome.
So having social responsibility is really an ethical choice that an individual has an obligation to act to benefit society at large.
That's true.
And I can't but help, being a museum director, to think of the museum's role in social responsibility as well.
Right.
And so when an artist such as you and a museum such as the AMA, I would say that, sorry, I heard something and it distracted me. I think there's a similar path that we're walking here, and I'm certainly deeply curious as to your process. And I'll get to a very pointed question in a moment. And the main question, which is driving this evening, is what is an artist's social responsibility. And today, with this world in which we find ourselves, being an artist must be, I think it's already potentially both isolating and communal, the normal life of an artist. But you've highlighted and put into high relief so many of what sadly too many people are calling trending topics today, like racism, like murder, like racist policing. And these have been around since
forever,
since the Bible.
right?
Where can we start? And and let me just throw this at you right now. So obviously your modality is to keep making. And we had a nice conversation just very recently where I asked, so would you call your art the answers to your own questions? And what is the social responsibility of the artist? If you are supplying us with these answers, what do you want us to take away?
You know, it's an interesting question. It's a good question. I try my best not to provide answers. Seriously, I try to provide the question. You know, where do you find yourself in terms of how are you exploring your own answers? How are you researching? What are you looking for? What do you hope to find in terms of being honestly enough with yourself to actually look for answers? And again, many times for me, the question is hard enough. Just finding the question to ask that really gets down to it, the essence of something. And I think that's the most difficult part. So the only thing I'm trying to do, and I don't always find my own answers. I end up with more. Well, I used to tell students, if you want to deepen your investigation, ask better questions.
Yes.
And that's what it comes down to, regardless of discipline. So I try to ask better questions visually. I try to provide an avenue, a way of seeing, because seeing sometimes is half the battle, because people say, well, I never imagined that was going on. I'm thinking, really? And I was just participating in the show in Atlanta. It's called Parallel, and I was looking at Parallel Universe. And I said, that must be what they were talking about, that parallel universe, that we both live in this world together, but you see it and I don't, or I see it and you've never seen it at all. How is that possible? But that's really sort of what it comes down to sometimes, that people, because of the nature of their lives, don't really have to think about it at all. So they don't.
Certainly. Well, if I could share just a quick personal anecdote. We had a meeting with some civic leaders here at the museum a couple months ago to talk about furthering the development of our programming, which is called Courageous Conversations About Race.
Sure.
Which is a high school program that Annie has taken on, and to great effect and great results. And we do this annually. And so we invited folks from law enforcement, from faith communities, from schools, Boys and Girls Club, you name it. And I mistakenly said, well, it's a museum's job. And I realized it was a mistake as it popped out of my mouth. It's a museum's job to act within the confines of its mission. And I think I said something about these trending topics today. And it was the chief of police of Albany. I won't name him, but he's a lovely gentleman. And he said, Director Wolf, could I just offer a gentle corrective there to what you just said? These trending topics have been trending since time immemorial.
Right.
And I said, thank you. I'm sorry. I was thinking more of the media attention to those trending topics, to those ideas.
Right.
But I don't know, maybe I'm thinking about Miles Davis, who said something like, there's no mistakes, just art kind of thing, play through your mistakes. Sure. And I have a feeling that there is so little room for anyone to make a mistake right now before we can stick our foot in it. I make the joke that I only open my mouth to change feet.
Right.
So let me just throw this at you. What can a museum do beyond the traditional ways that we are museums, with a focus on collections, on exhibitions, on education, on events, to to act, to perform, to change, and actually hopefully continue to, or even just begin to make our country better. Because I would say some of these issues are endemic to our country.
Yeah, sure. I think that these are indeed difficult times. There's no question about that. But I would never ask every artist to be involved in this process. It's a hard, drawn out process. It really is. And it goes on for decades. At least it has for me. And for those who are involved in this process, for them as well. I don't think we mind the process so much. It's what we do. I was giving a lecture one evening at a church, and I was asked, and the gentleman said, well, I think you're preaching to the choir. I said, well, it seems, but by this time you'll be singing a different tune. And I think that's really what it comes down to. If you think that I'm preaching to the choir, then let that be reflected in your actions, your changes in policy, and all those kinds of things. Show me. And I always talk about this old lady I used to know, and she said, don't tell me, show me.
Yep.
And that's ultimately what it comes down to. And I don't know, I think that it's, for all the artists, and this is me in my youth, of course, when I go back forever ago, I used to give Sunny painters a hard time, right? And that was during my youth. I grew out of that really, really quickly, because we need all the painters and artists we can find on this earth. We really do, because they all make contributions, and never enough, never enough. But I think that choosing this path is a special path in a way, because we're not just, it's not abstraction for the sake of abstraction, It is social abstraction, in a manner of speaking. It is asking the viewer to look for more. And I think today, we're asking museums to do more along those lines, to investigate, to find the people who are willing to put these things out there in a very honest way, without covering it up, without making it look good, without making it pretty, and all those kinds of things. Because sometimes the truth is simply the truth, and it is what it is. We can make it look good all day long. It won't change the fact that it's the truth, And just because it's ugly doesn't make it bad. It just means that this is what it is. And that's okay, And we have to get used to that too. At some point, we don't have to show it every day necessarily, but I think we have to be willing to put it out there occasionally, so that we can come to terms with that. We talk about growing audiences in terms of museums, developing audiences, being educational institutions. Well, I think part of that responsibility is to educate their audience, to make them feel uncomfortable from time to time, so that they can grow, intellectually. It changes everything. It really does. And what you end up with down the road is a much more informed audience, which only brings more to the table for the museum.
Agreed. You just jogged a memory of a Bertolt Brecht line. I don't remember what it's from, but the line is, "In the dark times, will there be singing? Yes, there will be singing of the dark times."
Right. That is very true.
And you certainly surface themes that are both current and recent and eternal. And it's incredibly moving to be sitting in this space all by myself in the evening right now. But I wanted to go back to another great person, Johnetta Cole, who is a wonderful museum leader. And I've had the honor to hear her speak several times, as I'm sure you have. She said recently, thinking about what the world is experiencing right now, especially what's going on in this country, she said, could we actually even begin to imagine that our museums could be of special importance coming out of this pandemic? And an anthem that we carry on here at the AMA is, can this museum meet the needs of this community? Because only then would we be relevant.
Sure.
And in the past, museums were funded and built and created mostly for white people.
Sure.
For centuries.
Oh, absolutely.
And that kind of specificity is hackneyed and outgrown and tired, and we've all understood that to different degrees recently. But I don't know. I just see the social responsibility of the artist and the museum as kind of intertwined. And I think moments like these, just being able to talk about these themes is a positive move. It's a positive direction.
Oh, I think so too. I mean, it's one of those things, Andy, when you really get down to it and you really start talking about these kinds of things and the role that museums play, then we have to talk about their donors, you see,
Yes.
and the role that the donor plays, because he or she dictates many times what that museum is going to do, going to show, won't show, and on and on and on. I remember this exhibition many years ago, and I can't think of the artist right now, but he was commenting on Exxon. Exxon didn't want him commenting on Exxon.
Mhm.
So the museum ended up not doing the show because Exxon was funding other exhibitions at that institution. So they never did the show. So that work was never shown. The audience never had a chance to respond to it in any way at all, you know, and which seems really, really the idea of censoring that way. Again, it's so problematic on so many levels. It just is.
Certainly.
You know, I was scheduled to do an exhibition some years ago, and I called, I think maybe on a Thursday. The museum was opening, the show was opening on Sunday. So I called on Thursday to see if I could be of any assistance at all. I said, "This is Juan Logan. I just called to see if I could be of any assistance. You know, do you need anything from me, information, blah, 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 about the installation and all that?" And the receptionist said, "Well, no, that show's not opening on Sunday." I said, it is. It's been scheduled for 2 years now. There's a catalog for it and all the work is there, blah, blah, blah. I said, no, no. What I didn't know is that the show had been canceled because of the nature of the work in the show. They felt was a little too heavy for their audience. So they decided not to show the work at all. They were simply going to put it in storage, leave it in storage until it's time to go to the next venue. And they never actually showed the work at all. It happened.
What happened to the catalog?
The catalog was well, the show had traveled. You know,
Okay.
the catalog was actually funded by I think New York Council for the Arts. So it made its rounds, if you will. The show had.
Okay.
But it was really curious though that even after all that planning and everything else, everybody knew it was coming. The curators were all for it. It's just that the board wasn't for it. So I think when you talk about responsibility, social responsibility, museums, the role that they can play, it really depends, I think, on the board, the diversity of that board. It depends on donors and the diversity of those donors. It is, I mean, all those kinds of things come into play, as you know, and it's so important that we be as inclusive as possible. Because I used to talk about this sometimes. I was doing a talk at the World Bank in Washington, and it was a talk to mid-level museums from around the country. And I had a show at the World Bank at that time, and it was really funny. I said, all of our dollars spent, really they do. You just have to ask for them. And it was a very, very funny thing because many times we simply don't ask for those dollars from the larger. Our community can be, 80%. Well, I'm here, but
I see you.
okay, and there's a symbol up. Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
As long as everybody else can as well. But I think no, it's fine. It's good. I think that it's one of those things where we simply try to find ways to be as inclusive as possible. Is what I'm getting at. No matter if we look at the demographics of the city, of the town, of whatever it is, then let's think about that. Let's get everybody involved in the process so they can grow as well. So I think it really is all about growth.
Certainly.
That's all.
Well, that leads me to my next question.
Sure.
You talked a little bit earlier about not honing in on a particular direction or ethnicity, but if you wouldn't mind amplifying a bit, you said it's easy to take it down those kinds of paths rather than saying things that happen in America are impacting all of us each and every day. Right. And I just want to add that you should have been a diplomat, at least as a side job, because because you have a way of penetrating into this very tough stuff that still makes it conversational, and that we can carry on a very sober conversation about some of the most difficult themes affecting us these days, that's been affecting our country since the beginning. And I'm just really grateful. I really appreciate your approach to that. But just to go back to what I was saying, well, you also say that the hope is that we will embrace those things and bring about real change because it matters to all of us. And, you know, again, I was remembering a story that Lonnie Bunch said that I don't know if he had witnessed it or one of his staff at the African American Museum in DC, but apparently a white cyclist had pulled up in front of the museum with a bouquet of flowers and had knelt in front of the building, and he was crying. And it was either Lonnie or one of his team that came out and said, "Can we help you?" And he said, basically, I'm paraphrasing, "I don't know what else to do. I need you to help me find myself." Because he didn't know how to act or react in this overwhelming time.
Sure.
And I certainly understand my identity to some degree, having some psychological awareness, but I'm wondering, does it really boil down to the individual and the individual's social responsibility? And
I honestly think so. I think that, first of all, we have to believe that there is an issue. We have to know that there is. It's about our individual involvement, our desire. We can't change the world, so to speak, but we can change individually. We can change our group of friends. We can talk to them. We can get them involved in the process. We can do lots of things. We can do lots of things as opposed to doing nothing. And ultimately, that's what it comes down to. You have to want to do this. It's not going to happen without you being involved. And I can talk, I can march, I can protest, I can do all these things every day of my life. But until you, being in the power position, are willing to change the policies that are impacting me, that ultimately will also impact you too. Remember that old story about holding someone in place? If you're standing on my foot to keep me in place, you can't move either. So you lose too.
Yeah.
It's looking at today's environment, particularly economically, and saying all these businesses are trying to stay in business.
Right.
Would they care whose dollar is coming through the door? Should they care whose dollar is coming through the door at this point, when they're simply trying to stay alive, trying to survive? Or would they be more open because it's just that dollar? See, I can look beyond who's bringing it in today more than any other time in my life because I'm trying to survive here. If you can help me, then please do. I think it's what people are saying today more than ever. It's a shame that it came down to this. When we look at all those frontline workers, does it matter who's trying to save your life? Would you really, really care that much that, oh no, I don't want you touching me? Maybe yesterday you would. Today, please touch me as much as you need to save my life. And on and on and on.
Yeah.
Because it gets down to actually caring and realizing that people are here to help you if you will let them do that.
Does the artist offer community care?
Does the artist community care?
Does the artist offer community care through his or her work?
Here's what we did in New York. The gallery I'm with there sponsored this fundraiser of sorts. So we were all selling work to raise money for the frontline, to feed the frontline. So we sold work for, I guess, about 2.5, 3 months. And all that money went to raise money for the frontline. We do what we can.
Yeah.
We do what we can. And I think, again, that's what it comes down to. You have to want to do it.
Sure.
You have to be willing to give up something to gain so much more in the end. You just do. And
Well,
as this other old woman said, it's a good life if you don't weaken.
it's a good life if you don't
Weaken.
weaken. Well, I have a personal and a professional, somewhat selfish question
Sure,
on behalf of the museum.
sure.
Um, Albany, Georgia is a very proud town. I
Mhm,
wouldn't say it's little. It's certainly not big.
mhm.
The metropolitan statistical area is about 150,000.
That's great.
Um, there's a lot of rural community here.
Mhm,
There is I would say, a significant, substantive, high level of poverty.
mhm.
The town is about 77% African American,
Okay.
and this museum has been a very active element in that community,
Mhm.
but it strives to do so much more,
Sure.
and it may not be the place where everyone wants to go on the weekends,
Mhm.
but we are moving in the next few years to our downtown site,
Oh, that's great.
which is the downtown area of Albany right now. Has some gentrification,
Mhm.
but large sections are a no man's land.
Sure.
And where our new building will be is kind of a island in the midst of, um, I don't know, it's hard to describe. It's, some call it an urban blight,
Mhm.
but I think that will add something to the downtown community. I guess what I'm saying is, my selfish question is,
Mhm.
as we plan strategically to be more relevant to
Mhm.
the community and to focus more on community care
Mhm.
and to demonstrate to the thousands upon thousands of people who
Sure.
may not even know we exist
Right.
in this very small, tight-knit, but still in many ways segregated community,
Sure.
you know, we need guidance. And
Mhm.
I would love to hear some of your thoughts about what can a museum do today in a
Mhm.
town with some of those broad characteristics
Sure.
to be of relevance.
Right. Well, I would be more than happy to participate in any way I can along those lines. And I would also, I mean, this is,
How many people are watching?
I say this only because she is really, really good at what she does. I would encourage you to invite Janelle Logan down. Janelle is the executive director of Creative Interventionalists out of San Francisco, and she deals with community and art
Wonderful.
in really, really wonderful ways. And matter of fact, we're talking next week. No, it's in November. We're talking in November to a group in South Carolina about something very, very similar. But I think that I was speaking with some folks down the eastern part of North Carolina a few months ago, and a different kind of question, but similar in nature, if you will, came up because they have a large African American community, but not much is happening there. And I said, well, why is it every time you involve even kids from a local school, which is primarily an African American Latino school, why is it you ask them to do things for downtown? Why don't you ever ask them to do things for their communities?
Mm,
So you can beautify their communities with
mm,
their art.
mm.
How does art show up in their community rather than asking them to come to you? Because that is a new experience. It's not one that people often feel comfortable doing because they haven't done it in the past a great deal.
Yeah,
So, but how often do we take art to them? And I
yeah,
think those kinds of things becomes really, really important in terms of and again, it's one thing to invite them in on a school trip,
mm,
but another thing for them to live with it on a daily basis.
yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. Do you know how to reach Janelle Logan?
I do. No.
Well, I would be delighted to talk with her.
She's really quite wonderful. I mean, she spent time at the Whitney Museum, the Studio Museum in New York, and I mean, she's made her rounds in that regard, and it's just really, really good at what she does. I mean, that's just, and that's not saying that because she's who she is in terms of my wife, but she's just really good at what she does.
Well, I'm a big fan of those museums and their programming, so I would love to speak with her.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you. I think we're getting close to the end of our formal discussion.
Mhm.
Let me just see if there's anything else we wanted to tackle at this time. Um, thinking about social responsibility as kind of the background, the fabric of this whole conversation.
Sure.
You certainly illustrated one of the dark sides of museums and censorship via or vis-a-vis boards that didn't buy into
Sure.
the mission of the exhibition.
Mhm.
But how can art museums work more nimbly with artists such as yourself and others who are offering up, for good or ill, answers to many of these penetrating issues that are so ever present?
I think asking artists to come into your institution and to simply be honest in their exploration in terms of what you're asking them to do. Many times we invite artists in who are really, really so good at what they do. I mean, really, really good at what they do. But can you not do that so well this time? Can you give us the soft, part of that, And many times there's nothing soft about it. It's imagine that I can give you a very, very beautiful painting, color, texture, everything else. And it's about something that's very, very dark. It's just that it looks pretty, and that's fine. I don't have an issue doing that necessarily, but at the same time, sometimes it just is dark.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. And I don't want it to be that way. It just is that way. So I have no reason to fool the eye, to fool you, to say this is something that it isn't. So I try my best to be as honest as I can in terms of delivering you my questions. If you allow artists to ask really difficult questions, they will open up so much more conversation, because if nothing else, it's that yellow line, one side or the other,
Yeah.
And I think that's what it comes down to. I mean, I don't really mind arguing about something or discussing something or debating something, but I will give you something to debate.
Yes, you will, sir.
Thank you.
And I just want to say that thank you for being so open and so flexible in everything you're talking about this evening. One of the most moving art experiences I've ever had from my youth was seeing Picasso's Guernica in
Mhm.
Madrid.
Oh yeah.
And we all know that painting,
Oh, yeah.
and most of us know some of the story. And there is some beauty to it, but it's also horrible at the same time.
It is.
And but when you think about what it's telling and
Mhm.
what the narrative is, yes, it's so impressionable, it's beautiful, but it needs to be dark.
It's a pretty dark painting. It just is.
And it needs to be, and it's okay. And I just have to say that as a non-museum professional, when I try to look at art as just a normal,
Mhm.
person off the street,
Sure.
man on the street, that's when I really start seeing it better again.
Right.
And so I appreciate so much
Thank
your time with us this evening.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
Yes. And was there anything else that you'd like to add?
Well, as you were talking, I was thinking of Kiefer's work, Ansel Kiefer,
Hmm.
whose work he talks about war, oftentimes, and there's nothing really warm and fuzzy about the work, but the works are absolutely magnificent. I mean, they're massive. They pull you into them. There's space for you to walk around almost, and I can't imagine them being any other way. I just can't.
Well, you think of John Singer Sargent and you think of the Society portraits in Boston,
Yeah.
but if
Oh,
you
yeah.
go to the Imperial War Museum in London, you can see gassed,
I know. See,
and you can see all the soldiers
right,
blinded by the gas,
Sure.
holding on to each other for dear
Right.
life.
right.
Well,
Our role in society has always been to document who we are, who we have been, where we are, the things that are going on around us. And because of that, history in and of itself is richer because we're able to see those things through art. Imagine removing all the art from all history and only dealing with the written word. It'd be so tough trying to actually see what we're talking about, I mean, from listening to an art historian talk about a feather in a hat for a half hour or an hour, I'm thinking, seriously? It's not that much of a feather, really it's not. But because it was there to be talked about, to be explored, is the important part. And I think that's how when we expand art history, when we expand our ability, our desire to know more, we use art every day to do just that.
Yeah.
It's who we are.
Well, you brought me full circle, sir, and this is my favorite show, and I'm the lucky one because I get to sit in the middle of your show this
Thank you
evening.
so much. Seriously, thank you.
Of course, of course.
Are there any questions from the audience?
Yeah.
Yes, so if anybody has any questions, you can type that in the comment box. And I did just see that Bruce was wanting to join us to ask you some in-person questions.
Okay.
But I think he is gone now. Just a second. While I do that one, I had a question for you actually.
Sure. All right.
I wrote it down. So my question for you was, is there a way to create work that's reflecting society today without being political or controversial or worrying about hurting feelings or stepping on toes?
Absolutely. That's all I do every day. In all seriousness, that's what I do, because my intent is not to step on toes. It's not to hurt feelings. I'm simply trying to be as honest as I can with myself. So when I'm painting something or creating something, I'm asking really difficult questions of myself in terms of what I need to do, how I need to do it, everything from color, texture to composition to whatever it is, so that I can say everything I need to say as economically as I can without wasting form, imagery, paint, whatever. And I don't know, I think there's a sort of economy, if you will, about what I try to do. But I'm trying to be, again, I'm just simply trying to be honest about it. Hello, sir.
Good evening.
How are you?
This is Bruce Campbell. I'm a member of the board,
Yes, Bruce.
and I'm just joining in. I
All
had
right.
a few technical questions when Annie
Sure.
was finished. I see Annie doesn't want to be seen, so she just got the logo up there.
No, that's not true. I just had my video going so I could show the slides.
I see. Well, I'm going to deviate from the subject and intent of your artwork and ask some technical questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Since you may be able to see in the background, I'm a bit of a print collector as well.
Oh, yeah. I love them also.
I've noticed. I've certainly noticed. In Ghosts, was that an edition or a single issue?
It's an edition. I think it's an edition of 20.
Ah, okay. Are there any left with your dealer?
I actually have all of those. There are.
I'll be in touch.
Okay, very well. Very well.
And as a I guess a lower middle class white man, your 3 paintings of the beaches was a real eye opener to me.
Mm.
I grew up a Yankee.
Right.
I grew up in Philadelphia, so.
Okay.
But even the beaches when I was growing up in along the Jersey coast were social. They were segregated, but not official.
Right.
Okay. In other words, even though I grew up in what we used to call in Philly a salt and pepper neighborhood.
Oh, sure.
The pepper members of the community didn't go to the same beaches as the salt
Right.
community. And I never quite could understand that, but that was just what was going on in the 50s and 60s. Back to my technical question. Your image of Outskirts number 6, was that also editioned?
No, that's not edition at all.
Well, I noticed that it was an archival digital image. I wasn't quite sure it didn't say digital print.
Right, it's not a digital print. The digital aspect of that only form the foundation for it. And
Okay,
then it's a matter of painting back into it, stamping back into it, collaging back into it, all those kinds of things.
I see.
Yeah.
Very good.
There
Well,
There's a suite of those as well.
as I wander through the galleries every time I'm in the museum, which is a couple times a week, I'm
Right.
fascinated with your work. And
Thank
I've loved, after when you mentioned that you had exhibited with Elizabeth Catlett, that explains why the two images, and I'm sure you've got more of her work in your.
I do.
Yeah, I should have bought some when I could afford them years ago.
They're
Because
still,
believe it or
they're
not,
still out there.
oh, I know they are, but the cost, now I'm retired and on a fixed income.
I
can't
understand.
But sharecropper was one that I looked
Oh,
at.
please.
20 years ago, I considered buying it from a dealer on
Right.
the West Coast.
Oh, yes.
So it's the part of your collection that you loaned us is just amazing. It really
Thank
is.
you. Thank
And
you
your
so
work
much.
is just so fascinating. And now that I understand more about it,
Mhm.
especially the one that's hanging there behind Andy in the image.
Oh, yeah.
It was explained to me, and of course it's mentioned in your catalog, but your explanation really brought it to life.
I'm
'Cause
so
I had-
happy. Very
Yeah,
good. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Now, do you-
well, I had friends that went through Katrina and
Oh, yeah.
stayed to help put the city back together. So again, on behalf of
do
the,
you make prints yourself?
pardon me?
You make prints yourself?
I studied at Tyler, Temple University School of Art,
Oh, yeah.
and realized that I didn't have the talent to earn a living. So I switched to engineering,
Right?
but my daughter is an artist as well.
Very good. All right.
And I've been a collector for many, many years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So,
Well, hey, Bruce, just so you know, I am starting a 12-step program for collectors.
oh, well, the room that I'm sitting in has 27 prints hanging
Oh,
on the
yes.
wall.
I know the feeling. Isn't it awful?
And anything that's just black and white, my wife limits it to 2 areas of the house.
See?
Well, as an interior designer, she's real into color.
I understand. But you have to admit, it is a lot of fun, though.
Oh, gosh, yes.
I know. I know.
And she's got things that she collects, and I just love the things that I've collected.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, well, again, on behalf of our museum and myself, thank you very much.
You're more than welcome. Thank
This
you.
evening has been wonderful,
Thank you so much.
and I'm going to mute.
I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you.
Annie, did we have any more questions?
I don't think so. Give me a second.
Well, Annie.
Michael Mallard says, thank you for your challenging art in words. I'm excited about the work of the AMA in Southwest Georgia.
Well, wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. If some of y'all are just now getting on, or you got on halfway through and we're a little bit confused, we will be, this video has been recorded so that you can watch it from the beginning. We did have somebody, Juan, just ask about the artwork behind you. Mm-hmm. They asked if that was yours. And I think this brings up something we talked about before about, your show is called Creating and Collecting. Mm-hmm. You told us once before that a lot of the work in your house is not yours. That you only have a couple things that belong to you.
Yeah, the vast majority
Talk
of
about
it.
that for a minute.
Yeah. It let's see, in this room, this is Wadsworth Gerald behind me, a piece from 1971. He was a member of the Afro-Cobra group from the early 70s. So that's where that's from. A piece called Revolutionary. And then to my right, there's Alison Sarr and Richard Hunt and Kenneth Nolan and Robert Colescott and Alex Katz and Martin Perrier. And I think it's one of those things of you're always trying to, because I love both printmaking, I love works on paper, it's what it is. You know, not just printmaking, but I love works on paper. There's a certain immediacy about that. So the things that we enjoy are tied directly to that. So some are print, some are drawings, but generally all works on paper though. And I think that's the fun part. My wife, quite like you, Bruce, really enjoys black and white.
Did you say Robert Colescott?
Uh-huh.
Okay, because to my right, I've got a Warrington Colescott.
Okay, very good. Very, very good. Yeah, this is an old painting by him that he did, I guess, 25 years ago. Yeah. But again, I think that's the fun part, though, that it's many times it's part of the both the research, the looking for, the finding, the running across something that just really, really excites you. And that is when it's really good, when you find something that genuinely excites you and you said, that is just plain good.
Yes,
And you know what I mean? And that's really the best part.
I totally agree. I
Thank you.
chased one particular artist for 13 years before I found a peace buyer.
There you go. But it comes down to that sometimes, you know? And quite like you, sometimes you find something early on that you simply cannot afford, but you still look at it, you know, and you keep up with it.
Indeed.
Most definitely.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
I don't want to hold you up. Like I said, Andy's probably tapping his foot right now.
No, I just wanted to say, Juan, on behalf of the museum, it's just been lovely to take this walk with you and this conversation with you tonight.
It's been a real pleasure on my part too.
It's something I will personally always remember and treasure. So thank you very,
You're
very
welcome.
much.
You're absolutely welcome. Thank you.
And I know we'll be in touch again very soon.
All right. Indeed.
And if
Listen,
you don't mind, I'd like to be in touch with you.
all right, please. Just get my information from Andy.
Yes.
Well, I'll have to wrench it from him, but I will.
Okay, fine.
It's all good. Annie, was there anything else?
No, I think that's it. Thank you so much.
Andy, thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you so
We're
much.
so grateful for technology.
I know. You have to love it.
It's wonderful. And now we get to keep this forever. So that's
Very good.
great.
All right.
If anybody
you,
has
Juan.
any more questions or
Take care.
anything that you think about, you can always email me or you can email our director. And come into the gallery. We're open tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 5, and then we'll open again on Tuesday. And I hope this has inspired you to come visit these works in person because they're monumental when you're standing next to them. Well, thank you, everybody, and have a really good evening.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you, sir.
Oh,
Good
you're
night.
welcome.